Hey, what's going on, my friends, and welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is Victor, and today I'm going to share with you 5 things I think you should know about this upcoming powerful new moon and solar eclipse happening on April 19th, 2023. My dog Rosie and I here, we're going to be giving you an energy update for this powerful alignment that I can almost guarantee you're already feeling. Number 1, you might be experiencing a lot of movement in your life. Eclipses tend to shake our lives up, and it does this as a means of allowing us to find and experience greater alignment in our life. Alignment with what? Your guess is as good as mine in that regard. What it feels like to me, alignment with my truth, alignment with our soul's purpose, and maybe even alignment with the universal will of the whole. You know, a lot of us talk about how we're all interconnected, and during eclipses, you get to literally experience on a very physical and emotional level an awareness of when you are not in harmony with the flow of life, with the will of God. And even though this can be initially perceived as a lot of disruptions, a lot of changes, you weren't expecting a lot of maybe problems or falling aways and you know, breakups within certain things of your life, whether it's with people or things you've been involved with, ideas and dreams you've been entertaining, you just suddenly start to not only see them in a different light, but almost feel as if they're rearranging themselves on their own anyways. And it can be quite chaotic, and it can be also quite taxing on your nervous system because our bodies react to these unexpected changes going on in our life. And that would be one thing, but add to that an emotional sensitivity. So you're already probably sensitive, but whatever feelings, whatever disturbances are going on in your energy body are even more amplified. So the total experience of this rearrangement, this realignment, this refinement of our life is not usually pleasant. It's usually kind of tiring and kind of taxing. And it can leave you wondering, what the heck is going on? Where are the cards going to fall? Well, what will happen, and you've probably consensus, is they're going to fall in a lot better of a place. You're going to find yourself, when the dust finally settles, and it always does, experiencing almost like the exact opposite of what you might be going through right now. So harmony, ease, flow, stability, joy, peace, rather than chaos, tumultuous emotional states, frenzied changes happening in your life. So all of that leads to this harmony. And this harmony comes because, once again, we become more in alignment with where we're supposed to be in life, where the whole wants us, where our soul had intended us to go, and what it intended to be involved with. Now, saying that doesn't probably make you feel any better because the changes are real. And the changes sometimes involve closing doors, ending chapters, closing entire books that have been a big part of your life for a long time. This can be with maybe key relationships that you thought were going to be around for a long time, and all of a sudden it's just, there's all this new information, and you guys are kind of getting pulled in different directions. And that, even though what I said is true, well, you're going to be in more alignment, it doesn't make it easy. It doesn't take away the need to sit with those feelings and to grieve and to understand it might be a bit of a duration of a process as everything you come to terms with these changes. Even though they're positive, it's still change. It's still hard sometimes. This could also be, and not in relationships, it could be with like your career. Maybe you had this whole plan of like going to college and getting a job and climbing up to a certain role, and you're almost there, but all of a sudden you're seeing the entire circumstance differently, you're seeing your entire life differently, and you're feeling pulled in a dramatically different direction. And even though it's kind of exciting and intriguing, you feel, still kind of sad. It reminds me of when I would feel called to quit a job in the past, and I've had to do this probably a few times maybe in my life. And usually it would be a period of getting a lot of information, a lot of obvious insight as to why I need to quit, why it's no longer resonating. And then I would be kind of stressed and about it. And then finally I'd make the choice to quit. I'd put in my 2 weeks or whatever, And then I'd feel sad. All that dissonance would go away, and I start looking around at the cool people I was working with and just thinking about all the memories I had at this place, and I think, man, this is kind of a bummer. I know I gotta go, but it's a little bit sad. So this is all my best way to describe the radical changes and transformations that you might be experiencing due to this eclipse energy. Number 2, I do want to highlight on one point. I wrote down relationship reorganization, which sounds like a very heady, analytical term for something so vast and deep as a relationship. But it's something that a lot of people who are going through a spiritual awakening, people who are growing quickly, need to kind of constantly reestablish, reorganize. Because you're on this fast track of growth and you're changing so quickly. Not just the way you look at life and the things you're doing, but your actual vibration. And there might have been people in your life that were at one point you were able to connect vibrationally on like many levels, and all of a sudden you've shifted, and then they're still kind of in your life, but you feel like there's that the connection is different. It's kind of broken, and it feels there's an unbalance. You maybe feel too enmeshed within one another's energy fields, as best as I could put it. And this doesn't mean you gotta go, you gotta just dip off and they're bad and you're right and they're wrong, or vice versa. It just means that there might just need to be a small tweak to reestablish harmony. Maybe a little bit more distant, a little bit more space would be just fine. But it can be confusing sometimes, because during the eclipse energy, it can be just everything can seem so big and so amplified and so dire and so urgent. But a lot of times it's just because we're not used to having that level of awareness to what belongs and does not belong in our life. In the past, I've made kind of like unwise, rash choices from this place of frenzied awareness, you could say. Years ago, I used to go to this guy's house and float. He had his own sensory deprivation tank built right into he converted one of his bedrooms into a sensory deprivation tank. This was like back in 2011. And every week I would go to this guy's house. And this is like earlier on in my spiritual awakening process. And he was a really cool dude. He was a really wise, he'd definitely been going through his own process for like decades longer than me. And I just saw him as kind of a mentor figure. And I really enjoyed our talks together. And anyway, after like going there like many, many times, probably like a couple of dozen different floats, and we became kind of friends. I went over there one day, and he was in kind of an off mood. And it was also, I believe, during like a full moon or eclipse or something, and I was also feeling kind of sensitive. And for the first time, I caught a glimpse of his ego, his shadow. It was like a Freudian slip. I saw like, a bit of truth in him that I didn't like that much. But instead of just simply understanding that, yeah, he's not a perfectly evolved, enlightened being, so what? You got a shadow too, bro. I took it as a sign I needed to get the hell out of Dodge. I remember I couldn't even enjoy my float. I went in after our talk, I was so upset about it for some weird reason, due to my heightened sensitivity. I didn't even really lay down in the float tank. I just sat up, stiff, wide-eyed, in the darkness for like an hour, like, what do I do? What do I do? And I finally, after the float was over, I was like, thank God. And I just said my goodbye, and I walked out the door, and I never talked to him again. The poor guy was probably like, what happened? I thought Victor was my friend. And luckily, years later, I emailed him and kind of explained it, and he was cool about it. But I'm saying this because what you might be feeling might be an amplified bit of information in regards to people in your life and your relationship with them and where they belong and the boundaries that need to be set, etc. And a lot of times a fine-tuning is all that is needed. Number 3, you might also find yourself closing karmic loops. Some things in our awakening journey, they come up and they're dealt with and released and integrated, and we move on. But you might have found that there are certain things that just contain, like an onion, many layers, where you work with a theme, you play out a cycle or a dynamic in your life, and you learn a bunch of stuff, and then you feel like it's done, and then you go on with your life, and it comes back, and you're seeing another facet of that same issue. And this can go on for months and sometimes even years. And a lot of it, at least from my own perception and intuition, has to do with our karma. It's like the themes, the lessons we chose to kind of like embed into our mind, really hammer into ourselves during this lifetime, where there are many different aspects to learn about one particular theme, and for a time it can seem like it's never going to end. It's just one thing after the other, one face of this particular issue after the other, year after year after year. But there are times where you do finally get to move on and shift themes. And it's kind of interesting. This may not have happened so much in earlier parts of humanity. I have a feeling that we would go through our karma much slower and maybe focus on maybe one theme for a whole lifetime or multiple lifetimes. Now you can move on from these big learning lessons, soul level themes relatively quickly. And the eclipse season, I think, produces enough energy, enough awareness to where sometimes something finally clicks at a root level and you find yourself finally moving on and liberated from it. And this is so fantastic. When this happens, when you finally kind of see it all for what it is and it has always been, and you know enough to where you can finally let it go, whatever it is, a dynamic, a pattern, a bad habit even, some type of unconscious thing you've just been playing out, all of a sudden you're conscious enough to where you never are duped by it ever again. And there's this feeling of freedom and liberation. You start to look around at your life and see just how much that unclosed karmic thing was affecting and tainting everything. And all of a sudden you're free as a bird and you can look around and say, oh my God, I can now do this. This no longer has to affect me. I'm free to pursue this. And it creates this amazing feeling of expansiveness and liberation and accomplishment, and deservingly so. Because to sit and chew on and work with a particular issue over and over and over again takes a lot of work. It's not easy. It takes a lot of courage, and it takes a lot of patience and a lot of trust. So when you finally lick it and you finally move on from it, fantastic. It's very hopeful. And it's good to remember if something else is to arise, some other long-term healing thing that you're working with for a while, you can remember, these things eventually do come to an end. For me, as an example, that sounded perhaps, I want to clarify a little bit in case you're wondering, what the heck did he just say to me? I'll give you an example from my own life that I've been sharing about a lot. So as a lot of you know, I've been trying to write this book. I've been talking about this feeling of intuition. I need to write a book. And this intuition to write a book has caused me to completely neglect a lot of other areas of my life and kind of let them kind of fizzle out to my own detriment. And there's been like a stacking of consequences due to my neglect of these things that the book, the inspired idea to write a book, was getting in the way of. And finally, I rooted it all back to this fear. This is the best way I could put it. I've had this fear and almost a paranoia about certain things involving my role and my purpose. For example, as you can see, I'm a YouTuber. And as you can see, I'm reaching a lot of people, more than normal people anyway. Not millions, but hundreds of thousands of people have seen my videos. And the more this happened, the more it started to mess with my head and make me question myself and think, man, is this all just some kind of like ego project for validation, to gain popularity, to gain approval from mom and dad through your YouTube channel, all this stuff. And while some of that may be true, admittedly it is to an extent, it's not entirely true. And there's about a 3-year period based on fear. I was completely denying and suppressing who I really am, which is a guy that likes to speak into a camera and speak and work with a lot of people at one time. It's not pure ego, it's just who I am and what I came to do. And writing a book was my higher self's way of kind of teaching me that lesson, to finally have it click with me that you just got to accept who you are. Accept your preferences, accept the way you like to do things. There's nothing wrong with it. And anyway, this last month or so, I was able to finally, at least not rid myself of, but see through that fear sufficiently to grant me this wave of freedom to just be myself and to embrace my life. And it's amazing. So that's kind of an example. Number 4, in place of some of these doors that may be closing, you probably also have new projects you are involved with now, just beginning, or feel inspired to start taking action on. And this could be something very new. And sometimes these new projects really just catch you off guard. You might not ever think this is what you would find yourself doing. For example, for years, I was a personal fitness trainer. And that was what, I thought I would die, a personal fitness trainer in my 90s, And eventually, in my early 30s, I grew, there was a growing dissatisfaction and boredom with that whole identity, you could say. And then I found myself sharing ascension energy updates and full moon updates on YouTube. And as this was starting to happen, I couldn't help but wonder, what is this? I would have never planned for this. And therefore, I was kind of hesitant. Even as I mentioned before, I had a lot of conflicting beliefs and doubts and concerns about this new path because it was just so unfamiliar to me. But now is the time that you might find yourself delving into unfamiliar territory. But the thing I've learned to trust always is that thread of excitement. Bashar, you probably all know Bashar, he says, follow your excitement. Just follow your excitement. Excitement, what is excitement? It's passion. It's an awareness of resonance. You might find a certain path. There's an option for it. It's opening up, and you maybe starting to walk down it already as I speak right now. And even though the mind has no frame of reference for any of it and can't help itself but conjure up all sorts of doubts and concerns, you can't deny there's this intuitive knowing that this is right. This feels right to me. This feels true. This feels authentic. This feels wonderful. And I've learned that we can trust those feelings. We can trust that resonance. We can trust that excitement. And now is a great time to really go for it and walk down that path and just understand that it's common when we do something so new, so unfamiliar, that there are a lot of doubts and fears and concerns that come up. But it's our choice whether we listen to them or not. And unfortunately, a lot of people do, I find. And I have in the past too. I'm guilty of it. I just admitted that. We don't have to. And I'm learning that's kind of one of the tricks to making rapid progress in life. A lot of times we want rapid progress. We look around in our life and say, none of this is in alignment. I want this, that, and the other. I'm going to manifest it. And then things start to happen and it's like, whoa, 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 whoa. This is too much. This is too quick. This is too soon. All this fear because of all the change. But we can settle in beneath all that fear to the core of ourselves, which knows it's all good. And if we can simply choose to not let that fear, not let the resistance, as Stephen Pressfield calls it, back us up into the familiar corner from where we came, and rather we can just see it for what it is. It's kind of a symptom of change, a consequence of rapid progress in a positive direction. And if we can kind of accept that, then we can choose to ignore it. We can choose to ignore it and follow our heart and follow our inner guidance anyways. Number 5, a time to commit. In spite of what I said, it's still not easy to ignore your fear and go forth on this new direction. Especially when going in that new direction doesn't immediately reward us. We finally decide, okay, even though I'm terrified, I'm going to do it anyway. This Vic guy on YouTube said I should, and plus I feel intuitively it's in my best interest. I'm going to do it. Failure. Boom. You fall on your face. Oh my goodness, man. It can be very discouraging. But I'm telling you, for what it's worth, it's the time to commit and not let these little hiccups detour you or sway you. Rather, use them to strengthen you, to strengthen your conviction. Right now, the family and I are watching this funny movie with Ben Stiller and Owen Wilson. It's called A Night at the Museum. And Ben Stiller's his father in their divorce, him and his wife. And he's he only sees his son once in a while. And his son is losing faith in him because he can't stick with a job, Ben Stiller, the character. And he finally gets this crazy-ass job at this museum. And if you've seen the movie, at night, once the sun goes down, all the animals and figurines and statues, they all come to life. And this whole orchestration of craziness where history becomes alive, essentially. And it's, as you can imagine, for a rational-minded person, Ben Stiller, he's like, what the hell is this? This is crazy. And by the end of the first night, he's like, I'm done. I can't stay working here. Who could? And he happened to be talking to one of the statues, Robin Williams. He's playing, I don't know, Thomas Jefferson or someone like that. And he's like, oh, he gave this kind of cool like battle speech. Like, you can't just quit. What was it that he said? What was it that Robin Williams said to Ben Stiller? Do you remember? About quitting that first night? I can't for the life of me think of what he said. My wife's over there unpacking groceries. I just asked her, but Robin Williams said something really epic to Ben Stiller, basically encouraging him not to give up so quick. He said, great, some people are born with greatness, and some people have greatness thrust upon them. And what he means by that is sometimes you have to work for your greatness. In fact, most people do. Very few people I've experienced are actually born great and perfect. And it's through these trials, through these failures, through these challenges that we become great. We become worthy of this new path. We become equipped to handle and to enjoy and sustain this new version of ourselves and this new life we're creating. So now is the time to commit. If you're feeling discouraged, if things aren't going the way you thought they should, now is the time to not listen to the fear and to keep on the path. This happened to me many years ago when my family and I decided to sell our house and move into a travel trailer in pursuit of this YouTube channel I'm doing now. It was an inspired idea, and it took a heck of a lot of strength and courage. It also took me a long time to come to terms with even considering doing such a drastic thing in my life. And finally we did. Finally we sold our belongings, sold our house, took the little money we made and bought this little 21-foot travel trailer, and we headed out from Michigan to San Diego. And I thought the universe was going to start spoiling me with all the rewards that my God-given faith warranted me. But instead of rewards, I was challenged greatly. Even halfway through the trip between Michigan and San Diego, we chose to leave in the winter, which wasn't smart. We were going through the mountains and the snow, and I found myself maybe in like New Mexico or something, going through these, it was Arizona, I think, these really steep mountains, up and down, the kind that have those signs that warn you about the degree, the 7.5% degree of drop, and up and down, up and down. And we were looking on our phone and our GPS, and there was a blizzard coming. And the blizzard had already arrived, and we were going through it in the middle of the night. My children are in the back, and we can't just stop. We can't give up because you can't park a travel trailer in the winter because all the pipes will burst. So we had no choice but to just forge ahead. And as I'm driving, there are literally people spun off the road left and right. At 15 miles an hour, I'm inching my way up these mountains, hoping to God I'm not going to crash and burn out. For one, I'm not even good at driving travel trailers to begin with. And anyway, I remember thinking in that moment, what the fuck? What is this bullshit? I just took a whole bunch of really incredible leaps of faith in pursuit of this thing that resonated so strongly, and here I am in the face of death 2.5 days later with my family in the back. But I kept going. Albeit very, very slowly and cautiously, I kept going. And it was like that pretty much until we got almost all the way to California. It was nasty. It was scary. It was snowing almost the entire time and icy and crazy the whole freaking time. But you know what? By the time I got to California, my head was high. I felt like a badass. I was like, you know what? If I can survive that, I can survive anything. So not only did I make it to where I intuitively felt called to go anyway, and things, of course, were fine, as they will be for you, but I had these new qualities, this faith, this confidence, this conviction that I can make anything, I can make my dreams come true. But you only get that conviction from not shying away from challenge. Like the famous book by Ryan Holiday, The Obstacle is the Way. The obstacle, the problems are the way. They are part of you succeeding. Before I go, my friends, as a gift to you, I've created a free guided MP3 meditation. I made it myself that'll help you connect with your higher self. It's called the Higher Self Reconnection Meditation. And I think it might do you some good if you're feeling a bit ungrounded or frazzled or discouraged or any of the things I discussed. If you just pop this in and listen to it, it will tune you back in to that place of knowingness. Anyway, I like it. Check it out if you want. I'll leave a link down below. With that said, have an amazing day, and I'll see you next time. Peace.